Hey, Jace here, and welcome to my podcast, Drop Balls and Big Calls. This week, I'm joined by someone that I've looked up to for a very long time, Gray Vickers of These Four Walls. From garage bands in Auckland to chasing big dreams across the world, Gray's story is full of raw lessons and honest reflections. We talk about early tours, creative burnouts, the move to Australia, and the overseas gamble that didn't go to plan. But more than that, this episode is about rebuilding when things fall apart. If you've ever wondered what it is really like to make music your life or come back stronger when it nearly breaks you, this one's for you. Let's get into it. Really good to see you, man. It's been a long time.
It has.
Got the old trusty old guitar rack in the background. I'm loving all the background here. It's
Yeah,
real studio vibe.
I made it look like I actually play guitar. None of this gear's mine. All my gear's at a practice space down the Gold Coast. I've just hijacked this stuff to make myself look a bit more legit.
I like it. And where's home for you these days? Are you actually living on the Gold Coast? You're in Brisbane?
No, I'm up in Brizzy.
Yeah,
I've been living in Brizzy for about 8 years, I think. Yeah, so we moved to the Gold Coast originally when we came over here, but I moved up to Brisbane because there's no work for me on the Gold Coast. How are you finding it all, like finding your feet with all the podcasts and stuff?
Big learning curve.
It is.
It's a massive learning curve, but it's been really fun to sort of be creative again, to be honest.
Yeah.
And just catching up with people that I haven't in a very long time, such as yourself. But yeah, a lot to learn. But probably what I've noticed the most is how far a lot of the tools have come over the years, like a lot of the AI editing and things like that. It's just cut so much time off so many things.
Yeah, well, even like captioning stuff, Like we do a fair bit of like gaming stuff. So all the setups that we have for like gaming podcasts and game catches and that sort of thing, we can knock out a clip in 5-10 minutes and have it up on the internet like the next 5 minutes. It's crazy how quick the turnaround can be for content creation.
Yeah, it's things that used to take hours. Something so simple, you know?
Exactly. It's crazy.
How long's the streaming thing been going for you with the gaming?
We started it like during the pandemic because we were bored as fuck, man. Like, you remember what it was like? No one was doing anything. You couldn't, rock and roll stopped for a year. And like we had like friends and family all over the world, and the kind of way to connect was to play games with each other. So naturally, we just kind of like wanted to keep, like, same thing what you're saying, like you're just keeping a creative thing going, right? So like I have these tools and I like doing stuff with my friends, but I'm not getting a creative outlet from it. I'm getting a social element from it, but I'm not getting the creative thing. So we all just kind of jumped on streaming for a few years just to kind of like be creative for a while. Gibbo started it just before the pandemic, because I think he just wanted to like find an excuse to carve out a couple of hours each night to play video games. And then all of a sudden he became like really popular and like built this massive community. So we all just kind of like jumped on that bandwagon. It was a good way to keep in touch. It was a good way to kind of like stay engaged, stay creative. And like we've still got like some really, really close connections. Even though we've all kind of mostly stopped doing it, we've still got like a lot of really close connections from that community that we built over the couple of years. Pretty impressive. And we all like, there's a few of us who did it, and we all had like different like things that we would do, different like themes and whatnot, and it all kind of worked together. We did a lot of charity stuff as well. Actually, we raised a stack of money for charity. Our friend Steve, his channel, The Resupply, he kind of pioneered a lot of these charity streams for like Starship Hospital back in New Zealand and that sort of thing. I think he raised something like $30,000 over a couple of years, just through the online community and that. So it was like, on top of being creative, it was a pretty fulfilling little adventure we had.
Amazing. Far out.
Yeah, it was really,
cool,
really good.
I'm going to go back down memory lane a little bit here, mate, because and I said this to my fiance a couple of times, where every time I speak to you, I kind of feel there's still that little fanboy in me that remembers back to, I think it was 2011, Music as a Weapon tour.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been CBS Canterbury Arena. And I remember walking in just as you guys started your set with my buddy Kev, and I was just blown away. Like, it was probably the first time for a Kiwi band I was like, this is just such a huge international sound that I'm hearing here. And I still reckon you were the best on the night, to be honest. And
I'll take that.
No, I fell in love, quite frankly, just with your music, with you guys, your energy on stage, your presence. Like, you really made a big stage. You filled it. What do you remember of that time? Because that would have been a huge moment for you guys in your career as well.
It was. That was probably the biggest thing. Well, no, it was the biggest thing that we'd kind of gotten involved with. It was a really good time. That was the that 2009 to 2011 period. Like we got to do some pretty remarkable tours. You know, we put out our first record. We were getting a lot of play on the radio. Before we'd done the Disturbed tour, which is Music as a Weapon tour, we'd already done shows with Nickelback. We'd already done shows with Carnival. We'd toured with the Butterfly Effect. We kind of became a bit of a go-to for Australian bands coming over to New Zealand as well that would reach out to us and would do runs of shows with them. And like the Disturbed tour felt like a really good bookend for that period because we're about to go into writing the next record. So it kind of felt like we were like at our absolute peak. Like this is us firing on all cylinders. That was a really, really good period for us, that one. But the tour itself was phenomenal. It was 4 bands. I always felt like we didn't fit on that bill, being that we were like the kind of the pop band in the middle of this metal sandwich, and especially going on before As They Lay Dying, which were like by far the most brutal band on at the moment. That was really, really bizarre, but like the fans responded well. All of the bands were really super sweet and nice to us. I got to see bands like Trivium, who are like probably the most professional band you could ever see backstage. Got to see their inner workings, how they operated, and they were the same age as us, which is even more mind blowing. But they'd achieved massive success, and I could see the maturity and the work ethic and that they developed to get there. And that was a bit of a kind of kick in the ass to do better and to be a little more professional in how we approach things as well. So it was a really good learning tool. And I think we're at the point where we were okay to learn a few things. I think the egos had dropped a little bit about like coming up and proving ourselves, that we could kind of sit back and see things and like, oh yeah, this is how things should be done. We should probably learn from this. So yeah, it was across the board. It was a pretty fucking awesome tour.
And it seems like a lot of those fans, really resonated with the music, and they're still, from what I've seen, a lot of the same ones that are turning up today, and they feel like they have that connection with you guys.
It was, and I think that was one of the first times we'd been put in front of a large audience outside of our hometown. And I've spoken to a lot of promoters in that over the years about this very thing, and that it's all good to get like support slots in your hometown, because you play most in your hometown and you want to grow your audience in your hometown. But if you live there, it's easy to do that more organically as well. To get down to Christchurch was a tough ask. To get down to Wellington was a tough ask. And we could only do it once a year, if that. To grow organically down there is a lot harder. So when you get put onto a support slot for an international tour, and those spots, you get thrown in front of a very large audience who's never heard of you before, who wouldn't come to your show if you're putting on your own shows. So that's where I think a large number of our fan base that we still have managed to hold on to, that was their first introduction to us. And it's been the same every time we've done like an actual tour with international support bands. Those are the shows that we gain new audiences at. It's not our own shows. It's the chances to be put in front of a new audience and impress people, so they'll then come back to our own shows. So it's really important for bands to get opportunities like that.
And not easy to get either.
No, it's very hard. And even now it's much more cost effective for promoters to put on local supports on their regions, because, you're not paying for airfares for ACOM, you're not paying the additional per diems for touring and that sort of thing. So promoters in tough touring conditions at the moment are saving thousands of dollars by not touring supports. And I get it, but from a support band's perspective, it's so much appreciated when you can get put in front of a large audience that you would otherwise never have a chance to get put in front of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like you said, there was a lot of, I guess, precursors to that event, and I want to go back to who you were growing up. Who was Gray growing up? Like, talk us through, I guess, your foundations as a musician, how you started to develop a love for it, but as well as that, what did you dream about?
I took to music very early on, whether it was just singing songs at the top of my lungs over a radio. If I had like friends whose like older brothers had a drum kit or a guitar, I would just find an excuse to jump on it and bash about on it, even from like ages 7, 8, really young, wanting to pick things up. Really fortunate that I was supported in that my parents wanted to encourage that however they could. So when I seriously wanted to pick up an instrument, I was given the opportunity to do so. I wouldn't say I had big lofty dreams of being a famous rock star, but I think as a kid, I saw music as a chance to do what I wanted to do. to have a bit of control over the direction of things thanks to music. When I was in intermediate school, I would often play drums at assemblies. You know when you used to have like the music teacher would come out, wheel out the piano and sing a couple of songs and everyone would have to sing along and blah, blah, blah. I would play drums along with the music teacher at intermediate school while that was happening. And it benefited me in a couple of ways. One, I didn't have to sing. I didn't have to sit in assembly and sing because that made me really uncomfortable. And the other side of it is that I realized that I could get out of class earlier and later because I've got to go set up. So I would up and leave and do things. And I kind of weaponized that a little bit, I think, as a younger person, figuring out that as a musician, I get to take certain liberties. I get to take advantage of situations. So if I focus on that and get really good at it, then I'm going to be afforded more opportunities to do stuff that I want to do rather than be stuck in things that I don't want to do. So I kind of use it as a bit of an escape. I use it as a bit of a chance to do what I wanted to do. But also I just liked making noise. I liked playing music. And I definitely was very much at a younger age driven by that was really good. That applause like fueled me a little bit, probably a bit more than it should have, but it fueled me a little bit to want to do more. Oh, you like that? Well, I'll come back next week and I'll show you something even cooler. And, feed the ego a little bit. So that was my thing. But I was always really encouraged at home to do it. I was always given the avenue. I was never told to shut up. If I was playing drums or guitar loudly at home and a neighbor complained, there was always a bit of a force at the front door with my parents saying, fuck off, he's playing music. So it was good. I was always widely encouraged on every avenue to pursue it as much as I could.
That's so important. Speak about the parents and being the guarding force for the neighbours is certainly what I've probably found in New Zealand growing up was there were a lot of people sort of pushing back, particularly if you were making noise, right? Certainly as a drummer, I had my fair share of noise complaints from the neighbours, even if it was just for an hour a day. But I feel so sorry for kids that don't get the opportunity to just go and practice for an hour or two because the neighbours are shutting them down or their parents are shutting them down.
Yeah, I think we had a bit of luxury because I think there was still we're still well before the internet and social media and all that sort of stuff, and I think there was a bit more of a community in where we lived. 30 years ago, I think it was kind of like you knew your neighbors and you could have a conversation with them and come to understanding about, okay, well, these are the hours it's going to happen. It's never going to happen after this point. We'll make sure the windows are shut, the curtains are drawn to block as much of the sound out. But you're always going to get the odd person kicking and screaming. I mean, the flip side of that now is that we have the tools to do so much more quietly if we choose to. I can record an entire record in this room and no one would hear anything other than the acoustic strumming of the strings. And if I had a digital drum kit, people would just hear that sort of tapping sound and that's about it. So we've got a lot more tools now to be quiet, but I think there is something really nice about just making a shit ton of noise. And I think there's a level of creativity that kind of comes with making a ruckus, which you're right. I think we do kind of miss out on a little bit now. It's definitely not as common. I don't think I can remember the last time I heard a drum kit out in the street. No,
very rare down here as well. Very rare I hear it now. Because that was quite prominent back in the day. You'd hear a band rehearsing in a garage.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the first couple of bands I was in high school, we all just practiced in their garage, and it was never the same garage. It was sometimes mine, it was sometimes the drummers, sometimes the bass players, whatever. There was always just an allowance that, okay, well, it's sunlight hours, noise is going to happen. Well,
so you had a couple of bands in school that you just touched on there. So obviously your teachers are starting to foster this as well, despite some time out of the classroom, but we won't worry about that.
I always just kind of assumed that the teachers weren't talking to each other. I know they were, but my English teacher doesn't know what I'm doing over here. It's fine. I can get away with it.
So talk us through those early bands. What did they look like?
You can't compete in the Smoke-Free Rock Quest if you don't have a band. So that was the pinnacle, man. At high school, that was the absolute pinnacle of performance. If you got to play the Smoke-Free Rock Quest, if you got to the regional finals, you were a king. If you got to the national finals, it doesn't get better than that. So in order to do so, you've got to find a band. And because at high school, you're kind of limited by what's around you. You didn't have the ability to source, this guitarist from the school is really good. This drummer from the school is really good. So you form the band you want. You join it with your mates. And if your mate's having to play an instrument, cool. Well, you're best at this instrument. So you play that, you play this. And yeah, I had a few bands. Me and my buddy Chris Steer, Ophi, we had a couple of bands in high school. He was a drummer, and buddy Brock Ingram played guitar for us. Paul Brommer, actually, from Quarter Two. I don't know if you ever got to meet those guys. They did a bunch of stuff in New Zealand. He sung in a band that I played in. Scotty Rushton, who actually played for Dane Rumble at some point as well.
Yeah.
Who's got his own jewelry line. He and I jammed a lot of times. So we had a whole bunch of us at school that kind of jammed in other bands. I think I took it a bit more seriously to a fault than the rest of them. And as a result, I kind of like pushed myself away from it a little bit more. I probably could have had a bit more fun with it. But for me, it was very serious business. We've got to win this rock quest, we've got to be tight. We've got to have this. And I think to the detriment of the enjoyment I could have had with it, and probably, later on, just fun jamming sessions I could have had, it was very serious business, even at high school. Very serious business.
Well, that was, like you said, that was the pinnacle though, right? Like it was the same for me, Smoke Free Rock Quest. I mean, what a great competition as well. There's been some incredible talent come through there. But I remember, I think the year I did it, I think Beneath the Silence won it. And
yeah, right.
That was probably the first time, in a way, I sort of shat my pants and went, shit, I've got to lift my game here, because these guys are just, they're next level, And I looked at a lot of bands like that, and it sounds like you sort of had that sort of same thing, but you had it all with your peers around you as well. Those were some very talented musicians that you were working with.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. And again, like to my own detriment of just taking it too seriously, I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I could have. But I remember, I think the last year I did it, I was playing drums in a ska band, which had, I think, about 13 members in it. And Falter were the winners that year, who ended up having a pretty awesome bit of a musical journey as well. And they were freaking amazing. It's funny though, like what I didn't realize is that I went to go see a couple of the grand finals when they happened, and Gibbo, our singer, was in one of them well before I even met him, because his band made it to the national finals. So they reached higher than I did, and it still is a real sore point for me.
So that competitive edge is still there.
Sometimes.
When did you do you actually remember the moment that music or being a musician really started to properly click for you, and you saw it as a career path?
I don't think I ever saw it as a career path. I think I was a bit delusional to think I could make it. I think there are a couple of things. I think when I was 15 or 16, I was starting to phase myself out of sports. I wasn't enjoying sports. I played rugby since the age of 4. I actually got into one of the things me going to high school was to be part of a basketball team. I think a bunch of us who were out of zone from our high school got allowed to come in because we were good at basketball. Our Form 2 team were undefeated for the whole year, so the Westlake wanted us in there. So I was playing a lot of sports, and I just found myself far less enthused by it. And then I wanted to play music. I wanted to focus on, I didn't want to get up at 7 a.m. to go play rugby. I wanted to wait until I could pick up my guitar and play. And that was more interesting than going to play rugby. And I think by the time I was like 16 or 17, that had taken over much more. I think the really, really big defining, like, I want to do this sort of moment, I had just turned 18. It was 2000, not going to say the date. I was working with my brother's band, who was Fluid, who ended up becoming Like a Storm. I was guitar teching for them when they were doing local shows and that sort of thing. And they got offered to support Zed on their Starlight tour. So they asked me to come along. So I did the whole national tour straight out of high school. I finished high school, got on a bus, and we went on and did like 3 weeks on this national tour with Zed. And that was probably like oh no, I want to do this. I want to be able to do it. Not from the sidelines. I don't want to be tuning people's guitars anymore. I want to be playing. And like that tour stuck with me for years as a motivator to, like, I've seen how feasible it is, how viable it is, how fun it is. I can see the path to get there. I can see the pitfalls. I can see the positives. And that kind of fueled me, like, for probably the next 5 years, getting Wolves up and running and, getting all the way to, that Disturbed tour. It was that tour that kind of pushed me to get to a place where, like, okay, well, this is what I want to do. Even if it's not a financially viable option, if I still have to have a job, I will take my annual leave days and throw them all at touring, because that was really fun. And I'm okay continuing to do.
Yeah, and they were at the peak of their game back then too, Zed.
Absolutely.
That would have been incredible to watch.
Yeah, well, they just got back from the States. They did that Weezer cover, the Starlight song, which they did for the I want to say the Rob Schneider movie. I think it's the Hot Chick or something.
White Chicks or something like that?
Oh, no, that was the Damon's brother. I think it was Hot Chick, where he was
Chick,
at a high school for some weird reason. But yeah, like that was their big thing. And so they'd gone over and done the States, and now I think they were about to go do their second record, and they came back and they were just firing, man, and they were awesome. And like they were such incredibly nice dudes. The whole crew was really awesome, and it was a really positive environment to kind of like just to witness. If it had been a shitty tour, if it had been a hostile tour, if they weren't getting along or there was friction or anything, it probably would have just ruined it for me forever. But because it was such a positive experience, it stuck with me for far longer than I would have expected it to.
Amazing. When did these four walls start to come into the picture? I believe it may have been through a classifieds ad.
Absolutely, it was that's the only way you got things done back then, man. I'd been writing songs pretty consistently since I was about 16, and there were a few songs like the first iteration of Wolves that had come from my high school writing days. But this was kind of the first opportunity to put together a band of people that I knew were really good musicians, like that I had specifically sought out. I'd found a drummer because I'd known him through another band that I used to go watch. I knew a guitarist that I wanted. And I pieced all these pieces together. The one thing I couldn't find was a singer, because singers are really hard. And when you're a 21-year-old dude with a giant ego like this, and someone comes in and says, I want to rewrite your songs, you tell them to get the fuck out of your house. So I wanted someone that I could still maintain a little bit of control over, because these are my songs, and you don't fuck with my songs. So trying to find the right singer was a challenge. And so, the classified ad, I think it was, I don't even remember what forum it was, just singer wanted, dude messaged me. I don't remember if he said he was from Waihi at the time, but he just said, hey, I'm really keen. And I'll age myself here. I burnt him a CD of our demos and I sent them to him via snail mail, because I don't think it was possible to email large files back then.
I'm so glad you said that. Trying to explain burning discs or cassette tapes, waiting for your favorite song to come on the radio and shit like that. Like, it's lost on, 25-year-olds these days. But I love speaking about these things, mate. Those were the glory days.
I was talking to my buddy Johnny a couple of weeks ago, because we're about to release some new music, and he was talking about some of his favorite older songs. And he found some burnt discs that I had made in 2003 of vocalist demos that I had just recorded at my house. And he had just like a CD wallet with a sleeve of them. And I told him to burn it immediately, because we don't need that resurfacing. But no, I sent the demos down to Gibbo, and what impressed me, other than the fact that the dude can fucking sing, and he was positive, he was keen, he was getting, but I gave him a week. I sent him a CD, hey, I'm going to send you a CD. Come up next week and have a sing with us. Tell us some songs that you want to sing along with, and we'll go from there. We'd been working on the instrumentals of our original song, but they had no lyrics, they had no words, so they weren't really songs yet. So we expected someone to come in, and other singers had come in and said, "Oh, I like this Creed song, or let's do a Limp Bizkit song, or whatever." So we'd learnt the songs, we'd played them, and blah blah blah. And then Gibbo came up and he's like, "Oh no, I've written lyrics for all your songs." We're like, "Oh, okay. Well, it's been a week." Sure, come on. And he sung them. He sung all of the songs that we had, and he'd written words for them all.
How many songs are we talking about?
I think it was 5 or 6 songs, maybe.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Jesus, who does that?
No one.
Yeah, so it was like, okay, well, this, the dude could sing, really nice dude, and can and has a enthusiasm that it's just exciting to work with. And at that point, I was okay opening the doors, and my ego decided to shift a little bit. Okay, we can let this guy in. He's all right, And then, we've been fucking writing music for the last 20 odd years. So it's going well. But yeah, that was the thing. I was finding someone who had that enthusiasm and ability to just kind of make me be a bit of a counterweight to my ego and all that sort of stuff. I didn't think at the time how important it was, but I think it's the sole reason we've managed to get this fucking long.
Well, I was going to say, it's one thing finding, incredibly talented musicians, but it's actually what I found the hardest is actually finding people that you gel with on
Mm.
a chemistry level. And it seems like for as long as I've known you guys, and you've been a band now 20 years, you've managed to keep a pretty stable lineup through that whole time,
Yeah.
a lot longer. But you have, like, and you can tell, like, you genuinely care for each other, but you challenge each other, and what you've created, like, incredible.
Yeah, I think at our age, if you're not having fun, you just don't do it anymore. I think there's too much other stuff going on in your lives. You know, everyone's got mortgages and kids and careers and all this stuff. And like, it gets harder and harder to maintain this sort of like musical endeavor as we get older. And if it wasn't fun, we would have stopped it years ago because, you know, Lord knows we're not making any money doing it. So it's not like there's a financial like benefit to us, like sitting in resentment and still going to the jam room to write music. It's just, we're just having fun and we've figured out a way to make it work in amongst everything.
Do you remember those early rehearsals when you all got together as a band?
Oh yeah, it was fire. Like I think if we listen back to them now, we'd be like, oh, we should not have had that confidence, but they were fire. We were ready to take on the world, and you know, I think our 4 or 5 months into being a band, we made it to the national finals of the Battle of the Bands. You know, we were doing a lot of stuff. We were getting to play some of the summer festivals that the council was putting on. I think in our first like 6-9 months, we'd done an EP, we'd done some recordings, we'd done a few out of town gigs, we've done some support slots, we'd done competitions. We were fucking firing, man. It was intoxicating.
And I recall Downfalls at Empire was about to come out, and you were breaking pre-sale records.
Yep.
Left, right, and center.
Which is,
you just had this excitement around you.
Man, what a time. We were on the front page of like the Herald, like the entertainment pullouts of the Herald. Yeah, we broke the pre-sale record. I can't remember what outlet it was. I wish I could remember what outlet it was, but yeah. No one had sold as many pre-sales as we did, but I think we were also in the benefit of like that was just starting to become a thing. I think when we were releasing Downfalls and Empire, the industry was shifting a lot to pre-sales. It was moving to a more digital medium. I think we benefited from the internet. We were early adoptees of the internet and like MySpace and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of bands weren't doing that. We were building a fan base through those social networks. So like digitally, we had a pretty decent footprint at that point. But like as a record, and it's like, it's laughable today, but I think it was still less than like 1,000 copies. It wasn't like a massive amount of copies, but I just don't think those channels had really opened up. So we kind of jumped in there early, and yeah, we did for, I'm going to say a week or two, hold the record for pre-sales with Downfalls and Empire. And the same with Living to At the End, you know, like the pre-sales got us to #1 through JB Hi-Fi and all that sort of stuff. So we were still managing pretty well to use those channels. I think they've evolved a lot more since we were doing that. So I don't think we would have a shot.
Don't say that. But yeah, both your first two albums both cracked the top 40, and you know, you get your showcase over at Big Sound in Brisbane. That was your first step into Australia, if I remember right.
Yeah. That was an interesting trip, that one.
Tell us more. Don't hide it. Come on.
So I'll give you some lessons about dropping balls. All right. We decided to make a bit of a big deal about it. We had Matt Boscher from Decortica playing guitar for us at the time as well. We were in a bit of a lull where Steve was starting to play guitar, but I don't think we had kind of reached the point where he could play and sing as well. And we figured we'd already been using Matt kind of to lead up to him taking over full-time guitar duties. And we brought him over as well. And we had too much of a good time. I think in the couple of days leading up to it, every now and then in my Facebook memories, I see the photos from that trip, and I was like, oh, that was fun. Shouldn't have done that. We had an awesome time at the New Zealand Showcase the night before our gig. We stayed at a place called Bunk. It's called Bunk now. It used to be called Birdies. If you know the Valley, you know Birdies. You know it's an absolute den of scum and villainy. So it was just a debaucherous time. It turns out that the bartender there I actually knew from Auckland, so he was pouring a little heavy as well. We got to the gig. We're playing at the Zoo, so we're meant to be part of the main showcase, and a few things had kind of gone wrong. The main headliner, who were meant to be we were promised jetpacks, I think. They pulled out of the show like a week before we flew over. They got replaced by a band called Little Red from Melbourne, who like we kind of fitted the original lineup. The new lineup, we didn't fit at all. It was all very soft, jangly indie music. And they moved the other openers around to kind of mesh that. So I think there are 3 or 4 like really soft kind of pop indie bands, and then us on that bill as well as like a main support slot. So the vibe wasn't right. And that's fine. Showcases are kind of weird like that anyway. They're usually a bit of a mismatch of different genres and that sort of thing. But we kind of got into our heads a little bit, worried about like what we would do to the audience and, how that would go down and blah, blah, blah. We kind of left a bit of the control around our gear to the team who were kind of looking at us at the time. And we said, hey, we need this gear to turn up at the venue, blah, blah, blah. None of the gear we wanted turned up. I had a single channel Fender amp with no distortion channel on it. So I had no distortion for the whole show. The drums weren't right. None of the gear was right. Looking back, the lessons that I would take from it is one, definitely make sure you get your hire gear early and confirm with the hire company what your hire gear is going to be. Don't just trust that someone's going to do it. Always bring your own sound person to a gig, because the soundie did not give a shit, and we were just living in feedback city for that entire show. And I think just maybe if you're going to do a showcase, don't get shit-faced for the first 2 days prior to the showcase. I think that should be a self-explanatory lesson, but apparently we needed to learn that one the hard way, because our performance wasn't good. It wasn't helped by the gear situation, but if we'd been better, like if we'd been in a better state to deal with it, we would have been able to pivot and adapt a bit better. But ultimately, the whole thing just kind of fell to pieces. And by the third song, I could see the people who had been introduced as, this is head of A&R for Sony. This is, the main booking agent for Live Nation. And all of these companies that were like getting together, we could see them one by one just leaving while we were playing. And it's like, at the time, I was furious. How dare they walk out? But fuck it, they should have walked out. They probably should have walked out earlier. Because if we're not prepared and we just absolutely shit the bed in that way, I don't blame them for leaving. So yeah, it was a fun trip, but like it didn't do anything for us, and it kind of set us back, I think, in Australia a little bit, because you only get a couple of shots like that at like things like Big Sound. Big Sound's a big fucking deal, and it's getting bigger and bigger every year. And bands going to it, bands playing that need to be on your A game. It's don't half-ass it. Don't go in with the attitude of like we're just going to have a party and then play some rock and roll on the side like we did, because doesn't work.
Yeah, that's tough, man. But it sounds like you took your lessons and you grew from that experience, and that's the key thing, right? It's moving forward with those lessons.
Well, we'd never like played a show in another country, so we just assumed that everything would be the same as it is in New Zealand or in Auckland, and it wasn't. It's a very different. When you tour in different countries, it's very different. So we learnt that, and like our subsequent tours have gone much better. We haven't had the same issues in that, but yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons, and just like a small little show like that, it was a bit of a bummer. To put it like, it was a bit of a bummer, but like at this point, it's a good story, because I don't think anyone who was at that showcase even works in the industry anymore. So
when did you start to consider taking the band overseas? When did you start feeling the need to do that?
There was a passage, I think, when we were leading up to releasing Living to Right the End, we noticed that the industry was cooling on us a little bit. We had gone from, radio played 2 or 3 times a day to night rotation, and then now this song's not on rotation anymore. And as a result, we could feel it cooling. Like the tours weren't coming anymore. A lot of other bands were starting to get the same opportunities that we had. We figured, it's just the end of the Downfalls and Empire cycle. When we come back with Living to Right at the End, things will pick up again. We go over to the Gold Coast, spend 9 weeks recording this record. Steve and I lived at the studio for 9 weeks. The others spent 3 or 4 weeks there. We worked really, really hard. We worked with some really awesome people. Forrester Seville mixed the record. Matt Bartlett produced it. It was like, we were really, really happy with it. We came back, we had The Passenger, which is the lead single, and we tried shopping it around to radio, and they were like, nah, it's not for us. So that was a downer. We'd had we had a lot of support from New Zealand on air through the Phase 4 funding to get the record done, to do the music videos and that sort of thing. So we're sitting on a finished product. We're sitting on a really good product. We'd done the video for Passenger. Anthony Plant gone to LA to shoot a bunch of the cast stuff. We did all the band stuff in Auckland, really, really happy with it. And then it just didn't pick up any momentum. And we couldn't get radio play for it. If we did, it was like the odd night, play here and there. And I think that kind of cooled us down a bit. And Brad and I ended up having a meeting with the person at Universal who was looking after us at the time. And he just said outright, there's nothing for you here. That, like what you guys are doing, what you're trying to do, the industry here is not vibing with it, and he pointed towards a lot of the artists that were picking up. And there was definitely a shift in New Zealand at the time. I think we were getting some genuine international success with a lot of artists, a lot of different genres in that. And we just didn't fit the mold. It wasn't that rock music wasn't fitting the mold. We didn't fit the mold. And I think Brad and I kind of left the meeting like, not bummed out, but it's kind of like, what he said made sense. It kind of tracks with us. And I was actually thinking about this the other day. I don't remember us posing a question to the band to say, hey, how would you guys feel about moving to Australia? I'm sure we did, but I don't remember it. I just remember us leaving that meeting and both Brad and I saying, yeah, we should probably just move to Australia. And then I've got a blank spot in my memory. And then next minute we're on a plane to Australia. So I'm sure there were a lot of discussions, and I know we did like a bit of a farewell show and that sort of thing. But I think it was a pretty quick turnaround between like, hey, this isn't working. We could change. We could do a dramatic change and try and fit with the industry, or we could go and try it in Australia. And we'd already done a few tours of Australia. We'd hooked up with the Bellicera crew. We'd done like Rock the Bay a couple of times in Melbourne. So we got to know a couple of really awesome bands. We got to know the Electric Horse crew because Jason Brown, obviously from San Coloto, had sung on our record as well. So we lined up some tours over there. We just kind of didn't stay. We just never went home, sort of thing.
Well, it shows that your belief never wavered either, right? Because for a lot of bands, that would damn near destroy them, right?
I think so. I think if we hadn't done the record, I think if we were kind of in two minds or we were working towards a record and we got hit with that blow, it would have been a different story. But we were just like, we're sitting on this whole album. We haven't really released it. We've put it out. We've done one single from it, but like, that's it. That's not exactly a dead record. We can go take this over to Australia and kind of pick up from there and do it all again. And I don't think it's going to be too much of a detriment. So that's kind of where we landed on it. Like, it just seemed a bit, I think we've gone too far to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater a little bit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that Electric Horse tour. That was literally just after I moved to Melbourne, and I came and saw you guys at the Ferntree Gully Hotel. I don't think I've ever been back to that hotel.
No,
but the gig was good.
That tour was awesome. It was there's something really nice about touring with Australian bands, especially at that time, because no one gave a shit. Like, no one had these grandiose ideas of making it, or like no one was playing the game, so to speak, and everyone just wanted to have a good time. So like every stop, every band, every person on the crew, we just had a good time the entirety of that tour. And then obviously, us being big San Coloto fans, getting to hang out with Jason and Dane and, seeing those cats perform, it was awesome. Like every night, just really, really, really good. So it was a good rock and roll lesson to be showing like, hey, if you want to do Australia, this is the standard you got to hit. And sorry, fellas, it's pretty high. So it was really good to see that elevation.
Do you think it's like the different size of the markets? Like obviously New Zealand's a really small place, right? Talking, it's essentially the size of Melbourne in terms of population. And you come over here and the mentality is very different. I found over in New Zealand, it's like people are very quick to cut you down and you're all fighting for that very small piece of real estate. Very different over here in many ways.
I think New Zealand has a much more tangible line to success than Australia does. Even when we were doing really well over there, we still didn't quite have the level of success afforded to us to go at levels, but we could see what that was. I remember when Homegrown started and we were on their radar for the first few years, and we actually went to an APRA showcase, like an APRA panel that they did, I think about 2013. And the guy who was running Homegrown actually pointed us out in the crowd and said, hey, look, pay attention to what these guys are doing. They're doing everything really well. They're putting out good music. They're working hard, blah, blah, blah. The problem that they have is they're not getting played on the rock enough. Therefore, we can't put them on our lineup. And they were very transparent with that. But it kind of showed us like, okay, well, the clear line to success then is play your shows, put out your records. If your single gets picked up on the rock, you'll start to do the summer tours, you'll get the festivals, and then you can do your own headlining. And that almost seemed like a really clear trajectory to success. I think because it's a smaller market, I think the media, like the radio and the promoters and the labels are all really closely connected. There's not so much that in Australia, I think, because you've got a much larger population, you've got a much wider array of labels, especially with independent labels. I think there's a lot more industry here, so there's more channels to operate in. But there's also, like, outside of Triple J, there wasn't really like a mainstream rock media, which there is in New Zealand. You know, having Hauraki and The Rock playing modern music. Like, we come over to Australia and we throw in Triple M and it's all AC/DC and Guns N' Roses. So, like, there wasn't really a radio station for rock bands to play to. So rock bands stopped giving a shit about it. And as a result, they just put out what they wanted to put out. They promoted it how they wanted to promote it and toured it how they wanted to tour it. And you can do a regional tour of New Zealand in 2 weeks. You could do a regional tour of Australia in 2 months. So, like, the avenue to grow organically here felt a lot more possible than it did in New Zealand, because if you weren't getting played on the radio stations in New Zealand, you had a ceiling, and it was the radio that lifted that ceiling up to where you could go.
But why Brisbane, out of curiosity? Because a lot of people musically would probably look to, at that time, Melbourne or Sydney.
I think that's why we didn't want to do that. I think we knew so many bands who had moved over to Melbourne or Sydney. I think we wanted to be a bit different. I think we'd also done the record on Gold Coast and we'd made some really solid connections. We knew the crew that we wanted to keep working with in the studio. We knew the crew that were touring with Electric Horse because they were from here as well. So we knew if we landed in Brisbane, we could go to a studio, record stuff with people we knew. We'd met so many bands and artists in that 9 weeks we'd lived here as well. So that seemed like, let's do something a bit different. Let's not be just another New Zealand band that moves to Melbourne, because none of us are that good at making coffee. And we'll go to the Gold Coast because we know people there. We've already done shows here. We've already started to build a bit of a fan base, and it just seemed like a no-brainer. It was convenient too. I think Gibbo lived at the studio for a few months while he tried to find a place to live. Like, we just had a bit more support here than we would have anywhere else in Australia.
Shots fired on the coffee front, by the way. Apologies to our fellow Melburnians listening to this.
That was unnecessary. I'll take that back. I'll rescind that.
But no, you did. You found an excellent crew there on the Gold Coast. Luke Palmer, I think you've been working with most recently on the last couple of recording cycles. He's just a whiz.
Even back then, Luke was involved. So Luke Stone's, we lived above it in the apartment. They had the big live room in Studio A there. We were doing the tracking. They had a Studio B and a Studio C that we could do guitar tracking, or people could come in and do edits and that. So Luke was always in there, even back then, doing edits. And, I think he was kind of learning the ropes from Bardi at the time as well. So we've been connected with him since 2012. Like, it kind of when Bardi started moving away from heavy music and moving into like the EDM and the pop stuff and that, we literally just did like a handover. Like, when we did Bravery, it was like, oh, Bardi, we're going to book you in the studio. Okay, cool. I'm not going to be there, but Luke's going to be there. Cool. All right, sweet. And then Luke came in and just like slotted in. I'm like, all right, cool. Luke's our guy now. and then we stuck with him because it works. And, it's so fucking important. When you're in the studio and you have a producer who's, he knows how to talk to you, knows how to suggest ideas to you, knows how to encourage you, knows how to get something good out of you. Like, they're hard to find. So if you have one that works, you stick with it. Don't mess with the formula.
Absolutely. And he's an absolute genius, Luke.
Yeah. Yeah,
now,
absolutely, no doubt.
So you've got this fresh start moving to Australia, but you also had a moment where you sort of departed the band. You took a stint overseas.
I did. It was probably the weirdest period of my life, I think. My wife at the time believed we had an opportunity to go to Brussels, to live there. We had work opportunities and that sort of thing. I think we'd been over in Australia for about a year. I think losing Chris, our bass player, and trying to start again we lost a fair bit of momentum when we landed in Australia. Like, even though we had the crew and all that, it took a while to kind of piece walls back together. I think it took about 6 to 9 months to find Elliot. And then when we got Elliot going, that started moving really well. But I think I kind of saw it as a chance to travel. I'd never traveled. I just turned 30. I think all my travel as an adult had been touring. I'd never been to Europe. I never thought I'd get a chance to go to Europe. So I kind of took it as a chance to go and do that. Idealistically, what I was hoping to do is actually kind of use it as a bit of a base of operations as an international thing, to network, to get to know some touring agencies and management over there, try and bring walls over, with the idea that if, we could build a bit of an international split thing. Because I'd seen it work with other bands. I'd seen, half the members live in England, half of them live in New Zealand, and then once a year they get together for touring and that sort of thing.
I Am Giant comes to mind.
I Am Giant comes to mind. A lot of bands can do it. There's a viable business opportunity to do it. Ultimately, the whole thing turned to shit over there. We lost every penny, and the job opportunities that was promised to us weren't there. A lot of other fucking nonsense went on. So, turned tail and came back to Australia, and then kind of tail between the legs, had to apologize to the boys and kind of slot my way back in there. But it's a tough one, because I got to do something cool from a personal perspective. I got to go do something cool. I lived in Brussels for a period and lived in London for a period. I got to experience the life like that in a way that I never thought I'd be able to. I got to just immerse myself in the culture of those places. And personally, that was amazing. But for the band, I had definitely shat the bed. Like, I had wasted a lot of their time. I definitely had set them back. I killed any momentum that they had. And they went on a massive New Zealand tour with Devilskin, and I wasn't there. And they couldn't capitalize on it because they were having to use hired guns to fill my spot. If I had been there, if I'd done that tour with them, we could have hit the ground running back in New Zealand again and maybe picked up some more momentum. We could have, who knows? That could have been another door opening to get back on the radio. So professionally, it didn't work. It didn't do us any favors, didn't do me any favors. Even though my intent was to try and make it work, I didn't. And then having to come back to Brisbane flat broke at 30, trying to figure out what the fuck to do next. Having to find whatever job I could to pay the bills, so I wasn't, living in like a 10-person share house just to kind of survive. It was not a great period, to put it lightly. Yeah, it was pretty fucking tough.
You would have learned a lot about yourself in that time, I imagine.
Yep, 100%. Very, very humbling. I also kind of I think for the first time, I felt a bit lost, especially musically. As getting back to Walls or whatever, the whole thing felt like I was starting again. And that was really quite confronting me. And I remember even we went out, had dinner with the band when I got back, and Gibbo just turned to me and goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, ouch, I'm here." But I had broken all of their faith in my commitment to things, that my willingness to do stuff, that they'd kind of had that, and then I took it and threw it away and fucked off to Europe, and then had to earn it back again. That was pretty tough.
It's good that you were able to have such honest conversations with each other, though, and ultimately, they welcomed you back with open arms.
Yeah, well, you have to. I mean, we've seen the worst of each other at every point. We've seen people go through breakups, divorces, the trials and tribulations of life. If you can't be honest with the people you've gone through that with, I don't think you can be honest with anyone. So yeah, they were honest and they were brutal with me, and I needed it because they had lost too much time at my expense already. I couldn't waste any more of their time.
It's interesting. Gibbo actually mentioned that you're probably one of the most structured guys in the band. You basically operate off spreadsheets.
I do.
which is amazing. I think it says a lot about you. But I can see when you came back, you started building a career as I believe, a quality analyst.
Business analyst now, yeah.
Business analyst. And concurrently, you're starting to create this masterpiece This Is Not a Future with the band, with a slightly new lineup as well. Talk us through that period, like what that rebuild, I suppose, of your life actually looked like.
The rebuild was very positive. I, worked my way out of that relationship and I got free again. And, I started to really learn about what I wanted to be around. I learned about what was important to me. And I think something that you and I connected on way back then is I wanted to go to more rock and roll gigs. So I reached out to a couple of music publications that I knew and I started doing reviews, gig reviews, that sort of thing. And, I obviously got you involved in that sort of thing as well with Libel and whatnot. But that was just an avenue for me to kind of rediscover going to live music and getting back into the scene and meeting new people and seeing new things and, re-entrenching myself that I'd kind of withdrawn from. I hadn't gone, I wasn't going to gigs regularly and I wasn't doing a lot of that stuff. So I got to be me again. And as a result, I got to be more honest in my creation of things. It was hopefully a better person to be around. And and then we started writing again. Elliot filling out the lineup is just, it's taken a whole new life to the band. Like it feels like there's two eras of the band. There's BE and AE. And I think when we started really clicking, writing together, the four of us, it was a whole big shift for us and it felt really, really good. But like this Is Not a Future took 4 years, I think. We started doing Bravery in 2016. We did Over and Over and Far Away along with that. And then, it took us another 2 or so years to actually do the record. Because at that point we started to slow down. We started to get to the pace where we operate at now was like, we've all got way too much going on in our lives that we can't go to a practice space 3 times a week and write. We're all distant as well. So like trying to actually get in the room together to write, is a lot harder and has been a lot harder. So, we operate with Dropbox and that sort of thing and spreadsheets and it just takes a lot longer, but it's good. It was good writing. It felt good writing that music because like what we were writing before I left, and I think where I was in my own world, in my own head, I don't think I was writing good music. And then when I came back, like everyone was throwing out really good ideas and that we started to lift each other up. And it no longer, I no longer felt like it falling on me to write everything because what Steve was writing was probably better than the last thing I wrote. So I would work with his stuff. And then, Elliot would bring in ideas and it just became way more collaborative. And I think that was the bigger change in that period of writing. It wasn't just like, it wasn't this waterfall approach of doing things. Like I do this, then you do that, then you do that. It was just getting a room, figure out things and then build on it organically. And to the point where everyone's really enjoying it. And that was the first time we'd really done that as well. So I think the Bravery coming out the gates and doing what it did opened a lot of doors for like a lot of the international supports we started picking up, a lot of the touring we started picking up. And then we started to finally feel some momentum under our feet again as well. So we could do more stuff. We felt confident in writing more music and just snowballed into a new record.
Yeah. And boy, what a great record it was too. And
thank you.
I part of my heart kind of broke for you guys at that time in a way. Like obviously I was so grateful that record came out, but COVID happened.
Yeah,
and it just you're sort of stuck with shit A and shit B, I suppose.
What do you do? Like it was so unknown territory at the time as well. Like we're in a global pandemic. None of us have known what a global pandemic would do. None of us had lived in a lockdown state before. And we've just been sitting on this thing. So we finished it. We wrapped it in like November 2019. And I don't know if you've seen, there's a documentary on YouTube that Dylan Cross did for us. Dylan, just a photographer at a gig one night, saw us, reached out and said, hey, I'd love to shoot some behind the scenes stuff. Absolutely, come on in. He spent a day with each of us in the studio and shot this documentary. And like we weren't expecting anything more than like bit of behind the scenes footage that we can maybe use for socials, but he put together an entire fucking documentary, and it's really, really good. It's really, really good. But the thing that breaks my heart about it is that we're all talking about what we're planning to do when the record comes out. And the narrative is like, yep, get the record out, hit the ground running, get on the road, start touring. And fuck, that didn't happen. You throw, and with Spotify and everything starting to become really overpopulated and music becoming an algorithm-based approach and all of this sort of stuff, we put it out, and like it does every release, once it's out for a month, it's kind of lost in the void. And if you didn't get it on the first month, you don't get it. And I think This Is Not the Future kind of did that to a degree. The singles did very well. White Lies, I think it's over 2 million plays and all that now, and we won a Queensland Music Award with it and all that. So we did a lot of good stuff with it, but like we got the album out and then we just got grounded, and sucks. It was a real bummer that happened. But I mean, we're not the only ones. Fuck, how many bands just stopped during COVID? How many bands do you know that just like they don't exist anymore because COVID happened?
So, I mean, I think it's simply because so many people reevaluated their lives. But yeah, again, the momentum that everyone lost in that period, the changing algorithms, like the music space, the creative space in general, just became such a hard place to navigate for people.
Yeah. And I think that was the benefit that we took out of that was that it didn't ruin us. Like the fact that the band didn't do stuff at that point wasn't the be all and end all. Like it was kind of like we've all got enough other stuff going on in our worlds that if the band isn't like succeeding at the highest levels, it's not a blow. Like the band's doing what the band does. And if people like stuff, they like it. If they don't like it, they don't like it, whatever. It's not going to crush us like it would have done 10 years earlier. So, when we could start playing shows again, we could start touring again. We did. Like, I think we just picked up where we left off because we're doing about fun, and it was making sure that we had a good time and enjoyed it rather than trying to, be the biggest freaking thing we could be. I think that shift had happened over COVID for us.
Do you think that's why you've lasted so long as a band? It's just, you still enjoy each other's company. What do you think has given you that longevity as a band?
I think it's that. I think it's that we genuinely enjoy it. That like when we put something together, it still is a reinvigorating thing. Like when we're creating something, it still hits really hard, like it did 15 years ago. Like we still have a good time doing everything. I also think there's a bit of stubbornness to it as well. Like, what else do I do with my spare time if not this? And we've often talked about, like we'll just give up walls and become a covers band and we'll go play the corporate circuit. I haven't done covers work. I don't think I want to do that anymore. So I think it's just, we're not losing money. We're not hemorrhaging money. It's not putting a burden on our families and all that sort of stuff. Well, not putting too much of a burden. I can't speak for the others. It's not an all-consuming thing anymore, and it's just we still have fun, and I still get to have new experiences. Like we get to still do new things every now and then, which is cool, and that's why we got into this, right?
And you're about to embark on a East Coast and New Zealand tour in the not too distant future.
Yeah. Well, small tour. We're doing a couple of shows. We're dipping our toes into a headlining show in Melbourne, which is a bit terrifying because we haven't done one of those since 2017. So again, it's just like, what can we do? What haven't we done for a while? What can we do that's going to be fun and interesting? We're already going to Auckland. Let's throw a Melbourne show in there. So yeah, it's just one of those. Why not? We can afford to do it. It makes sense to try it. We got a fan base down in Melbourne who want to see us, who haven't seen us since 2019. If we can't get the tour supports, if we can't get those slots to go down there with other bands, we'll just go do it ourselves.
Amen. And we're bloody excited to see you too, mate. It's been a while. So yeah, we'll be welcoming you with open arms. Obviously I touched on earlier you being the organized guy, the spreadsheets, the spreadsheet guy for want of a better term. But how has that side helped you balance the business Gray, the business analyst, and the music Gray? How do you join those two worlds?
I don't. I leave them as separate things. I think I am who I am as a result of, being a touring musician for so long. I think I have a perspective that is a little bit more rock and roll than corporate. I know I could be a little bit you know. Sometimes in the corporate speak, I forget that I'm talking to a CEO, not a roadie. I think that has popped up a few times, but no, most of the time I just keep it separate. Like most of the people I work with don't know what I do. They don't know about the band. I don't feel a need to broadcast it. I go in, I do my job, I get paid, and I leave. Obviously, I covered in tattoos, so they see that sort of thing. And I'll take a lot of Fridays off to go do shows, and they get curious about that. But no, I generally keep it separately because I find that and you would have found this as well, man. Like being in a rock and roll band is a hard thing to explain to someone who has no interest in it. And like people will like show a certain little interest in what you did on your weekend and that sort of thing. But if you tell them, hey, we flew down to Melbourne on Friday, did a show, had to get to the airport at 4 a.m. to fly to Auckland. We're in Auckland for 20 hours and flew back to Brisbane on Sunday morning. They have no fucking idea why you would do that. And they'd have no appreciation for the joy that you got from doing it. So my weekend was good. Yeah. I keep them quite separate for that reason. I just kind of it's hard to explain to people who don't give a shit about it, really. So I just generally don't.
Certainly for me, like when I was younger, pre-30s, I felt at times that was almost like a bit of a kick in the guts. Like it's almost like they were rejecting a piece of you. They're not doing it intentionally. It's you're right. They probably just don't understand that lifestyle or the mentality that you have. But yeah, so my view on it certainly changed. It sounds like yours has as well. But initially, I really struggled with that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think I wanted to kind of feel the same admiration from people at work that I did from a fan when I was younger. So I'd I'd release something, I'd show everyone in the office, and then I wouldn't get it. And then I'd be annoyed by that. Like, well, why should I get that? These people just come to work. They didn't drive to work this morning to hear me talk about my band. Like, they don't care. If they had a genuine interest in it, I would already have had conversations about it. And there are a lot of people that I work with who are like, hey, I went to the Atreyu show the other night. Did you go? Yeah, I was there. It was, you could have a conversation with people at work who you have shared interest with, but the majority of your team probably won't. Totally fine, because we don't get picked to work at a place because we all have the same hobbies. Picked to work at a place because we're good at that job.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're contributing something to that.
Yeah.
What's been your biggest personal win outside of music, do you think?
Biggest personal win? A few good personal wins. Obviously, post-divorce, now I am remarried. I've managed to find a life that I'm really happy with, that I can go home and I have support and I have shared interests. And so I've really built a good life around me. I think that's probably the most that I could ask for, really, at the end of everything. Is like, if I come home and I'm happy to be at home, that's a huge win for me. I think my career being able to balance being a semi-frequent touring musician and building a proper career, and getting to do cool things in a tech and IT and that space. So I think that's been really, but I don't know if I've got. Sounds really sad now. I don't think I've got any massive personal milestones.
No,
other than I'm really happy with where I am today, because I'm happy with the people I've chosen and kept around me. I'm happy with the partners that I do music with or do life with and that sort of thing. So I'm really happy in that regard. So that's probably my only milestone. I guess that's an ever evolving milestone in itself.
Don't diminish that. I think that is success. I think that sounds wonderful, what you've been able to create, particularly when you think
just
not
thinking
too
I should
far
have
back.
I should have run an Ironman by now or something. Fuck.
It's easy to put pressure on yourself like that, though, isn't it? There's always something. But I think at the end of the day, if you're really content with what you built, and if you think back, you probably do it all the time. Like you think back to that when you came back from overseas with your tail between your legs, so to speak. Like how far you've come since then, and how much you've changed as a person, and what you've been able to achieve. Like that's massive in itself, mate.
Yeah. I'm very reflective of that quite often. Like when I know that I can. Oh, there's a band coming. I want to go, so I'm just going to go buy the tickets on the day they come out and not have to worry about that. Versus, 10 years ago where I was like, what the fuck am I going to eat tonight? What is in the house? I can't afford you go out and buy food. So I guess it's bread and noodles again. Like that's pretty awesome that I've managed to get myself back out of that position, because that was not fun.
So what's next for you, my friends? What does the next sort of 12 to 24 months look like for yourself, for the band? What can we look forward to?
For the band, we've got a bunch of new music coming out. We went to the studio early in the year. We knocked out 5 new songs. We've got another few songs in the pipeline to record. I think next year it's all going to culminate in a new record, maybe some new releases and that sort of thing. But I think we've got, from the band side, we've got another 24 months, I think, of releases and touring and shows and that sort of thing. Good. Personally, I think just the same evolution. I think as long as I can stay in this trajectory, I'm happy. A lot more travel. My wife and I went to Japan for the first time this year. That was probably our first big international trip that we've done. So I think we've now seen that we can do it, survive it, and have a good time doing it. So let's go do a bunch more. So we're going to go do a bunch more traveling. That's pretty much it, man. Work hard. Use the money that I make working hard to go do the band and go do travel, and not sit on my ass all day and do nothing with the time that I have. Yeah, that's about it. I think, I don't know if there's any motivation in there or not, but that's what we're doing.
Hey,
I
man,
feel like I got to have some fucking grand plans. I'm going to run a 40K. By the end of this year, I'm going to go run a half marathon.
This is out in the public forum very soon.
You can cut that shit right out. It's not going to happen.
All that sounds awesome, man. Where can people find you? You're the band, the streaming. Where can people find you?
Spotify, Tidal, Deezer, YouTube, Apple Music, all of that sort of stuff. They can find us there. If they like silly video gaming clips, they can check Two Beards, One Up. They can do those two things. That's all I got going on.
That's plenty. Hey, thank you, man. I really appreciate your time. I just appreciate you. Like, you've been, not only yourself, but your music has been such a strong force in my life, and particularly at a time when I was very, very lost after my band ended, when I sort of took some time out of the music industry and things like that. Like, your support, your positivity, encouragement with Libel and everything like that as well. Like, I'm so thankful to you and your bandmates as well. And again, just giving me your time today means the world. I'm still a fanboy, consider you a dear friend, and I just really appreciate you, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you too, man. It's been awesome watching you grow this thing. I know you don't do things by halves. I know that when you decide to do something, you do it full speed or nothing. Congrats on getting this up and running, because I know how hard it is to do something like this and actually put it all together. It's a fuck ton of work, a lot of fucking work. So, kudos to you, man. It's pretty damn impressive.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you down our neck of the woods very soon.
I cannot wait.
That was Gray Vickers. Hey, thank you so much for listening to my podcast, Drop Balls and Big Calls. These 4 walls are actually heading off on tour this August, hitting Brisbane, Melbourne, and Auckland. Tickets are on sale now. Be in quick. Really appreciate you listening to this episode today. Don't forget to follow us on all the various social channels. And if you like what you're hearing, don't miss future episodes. Make sure you follow us wherever you're listening to your podcast. Thanks again.